Welcome to everybody who's just joined us. We'll be starting the program shortly.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're so grateful for those of you who have availed themselves to be part of this really important webinar. This is the webinar, Improving Children's Lives in Informal Settlements in Africa. It's 11:05 by my clock, so we are still admitting participants, but I think we need to get the program started. I'm going to open by introducing our colleague, Jacques Swart. Jacques is from Inyatelo, South African Institute for Advancement, and they have graciously offered to provide technical support. Jacques is going to provide some housekeeping and technical details.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Tammy, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to assist in this awesome webinar. Yes, folks, my role today will be just to take you through some housekeeping things. I will be in the background making sure that everything runs as smooth as possible. So if we could just look at some of the things that we are going to be, just to keep an eye on while we're here today. So firstly, we ask that everybody's mics be switched off. I will, like I say, be in the background, make sure to then switch them off. But if you can make sure that those are switched off. Same thing with the cameras. If you are not presenting, we ask that you please switch off your camera. It's easier on the screen, and then because not all of us have the same bandwidth, some might struggle. So it's just easier if we have less videos running. You will notice that the videos that are running will only be the ones for the presenters, and those will be the ones that we will be monitoring as we carry on. Please note also that this webinar is a recorded webinar. And of course, lastly, in this webinar, we are going to be switching between two different languages. We're going to be speaking French, and there will be English. For us to do that, we today have an interpreter. And what we would like to do is just to quickly take you through how this would work. Okay, so if you would like to listen to the interpretation, you will see on the bottom of your screen, you have a panel with a lot of icons. And one of those icons look like a little globe. You can just click on that one. And when you click on that, you will see that you are given different options that you can choose. If we could go to the next slide. There we go. So in those ones, you'll see at the arrow at the bottom, it shows different languages that we can choose. So in this case, we are going to be choosing the French channel. So if you at any point in time, you're listening to the to the webinar and you don't understand what the people are saying, you can just click on that French channel. We do have an interpreter there. When you click on it, you will notice that you're going to be hearing the interpreter's voice as well as the original audio. The reason for this is so that you can also keep track of the tone of the person and the intonation so that you can understand better. If you do not want to do that, on our next slide, you'll see there's a button that says you can mute the original audio. If you do that, you will then be able to mute the original audio, the soft audio in the background, and only hear the interpretation. So just again, if you are in this meeting today and the language that's busy spoken, you don't understand, you can just go and in the interpretation section, click on the French channel. And that, folks, is it from me. Thank you very much, Tammy.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jacques. I'm going to start by presenting the program. My name is Tammy Merrill. I'm the programs manager at the Slum Dwellers International Secretariat. I'll start by providing a brief introduction. Michaela Ashley Cooper from the Center for Early Childhood Development will then present a brief overview of the webinar objectives. We're lucky enough to have Karima Grant, who is the Africa Regional Representative from the Leer Foundation, and she'll be providing a brief presentation on the importance of early childhood development and the Leer Foundation's role in this project. Francis Mweje from Act Together, the implementing NGO in Uganda, will then provide a brief explanation of the project, Improving ECD in Slums and Informal Settlements, its objectives, methodology, and some of its key results. I will then, with my colleagues, present some of the key learnings from that project, followed by a panel discussion, which will include members of civil society, communities, and government officials to elucidate and provide some more depth regarding the key learnings from the project. We'll make sure we have time for audience questions, and we look forward to a highly participatory and engaging program. More than 1 billion people, among them close to 500,000 children, live in slums and informal settlements. These children often live in overcrowded spaces without access to adequate housing, basic essential services, and face the constant threat of forced eviction. This webinar explores ways in which communities can take the lead in supporting the development of our future's greatest asset, our children. Funded by the Bernard Van Leer Foundation with technical support from the Center for Early Childhood Development and led by Slum Dwellers International. We will take this webinar. This webinar will be discussing how the project undertook an explicitly inclusive process through established methodologies of co-learning and community-led implementation processes. This project enhanced early childhood development through interventions designed and implemented by communities in Uganda, Senegal, and South Africa. Michaela, I'd like to invite you to describe the webinar objectives.
Hello, everybody. As Tammy said, my name is Michaela Ashley Cooper. I'm from the Center for Early Childhood Development. I'm so honored to be here today and so grateful for every single person who's joined the webinar. I see so many familiar names and new people, and I'm so excited that you are all here to join us. So just to let you know the primary objectives of the learning exchange, they include the team who did the project sharing the innovations in these community-led approaches to ECD. So this project gave the power to the communities to implement the projects in their own communities, and you'll see how that worked as we go along. The next is to present the immediate results of our ECD strengthening projects in South Africa, Senegal, and Uganda. So the projects will be explained, and then the results that came from these projects will be shown to everyone. Then we're going to discuss how partnerships between communities living in informal settlements and local government can improve ECD for the most vulnerable children in Africa. And we're very lucky that in our panel discussion later this morning, we'll be having a few government officials on the panel to be able to talk to everyone about their experiences of working on a project like this, but also more generally about ECD in their country. So there's a lot for us to learn. And then the last point I wanted to say is the fact that this is a learning exchange. So for this project specifically, we had SDI, which is a community development NGO, working with the Center for Early Childhood Development, which is an ECD NGO, quite a traditional ECD NGO. And through this project, we were able to share our learning and our knowledge with each other and with the community groups that we were working with. along with our funder, who was the Leer Foundation. So for this learning exchange, we're hoping that the people on this webinar from the ECD sector and from the community development sectors are able to exchange knowledge between the groups so that we can share with each other. The reason why I think this is so important is that we often don't have an opportunity as ECD NGOs to learn from community development NGOs and the other way around. And hopefully, as we talk about this project, you'll see how powerful that is to learn from each other. Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Michaela, for that overview. I'd like to now ask Karima Grant from the Van Leer Foundation, who will be providing some information on the importance of early childhood development. Karima?
Yes. Hi, good morning to everyone who's here. Very excited to participate in this call. As I said, my name is Karima Grant. As Tammy said, I'm the Regional Africa Representative for the Van Leer Foundation, and I am based in Dakar. Tammy, can you proceed with the next slide? So I want to start with just explaining why and what we do at the Van Leer Foundation. Our mission is really to contribute to inclusive societies where all children and communities can flourish. Giving children a good start in life for us includes all children, which is why it was very exciting for us to work with the partners here on this program. We provide investment and knowledge, technical assistance to help leaders of all portions of society, all parts of society, develop and scale all kinds of policies and services, particularly on the period from pregnancy to age 5. Next slide, please. So we work in a set of, oops, I'm sorry, my camera's off. You guys can see my beautiful face. We take a global perspective. We work in a set of 5 countries, chosen for their diversity in geographic, cultural, and economic terms. We have a global approach, and now, since I've joined the foundation, we're focusing more on really expanding the work that we've already begun in Africa. So our ideas through this approach is really to develop and scale ideas that are useful worldwide. So taking the best lessons from spaces like this, from exchanges like this, from projects like this, and being able to scale it around the world. Next slide, please. So why the early years? Very, very important. So we focus on the early years because we understand it is the most critical years for not only individuals, but for society and indeed globally. We also understand it's one of the most important places to invest economically. We understand the scale of the problem we're talking about is 250 million children under 5, almost in every country around the world. They don't receive the care that they need to reach their full potential. We also understand that up to $17 is the return for every $1 US invested in high quality early years programming. And finally, the thing that is just probably the most exciting is that we know these are the most important years. We know we're talking about investing in years where 1 million synapses are created in a baby's brain every second. Can we, next slide? Thanks so much. We have learned that when we focus on babies, toddlers, and their parents, and we see the world through their eyes, we understand there's new possibilities that come out, and it's easier to find a collective path forward. Next slide, please. So again, the why, 3 important reasons. We'll get into that. Next slide, please. One, it's this question of human connection. We understand that the bonds that babies form with parents and caregivers are the basis of how we connect as human beings. We understand that these are neurobiological foundations of trust, resilience, and compassion. The next reason, thanks. So can we go back to number 1, please? Thanks. Next one. Can we go back to the first slide, please? Thanks. Okay. So we understand that it's very, very important for not only babies, we understand how important the neurobiological development is for babies, but we also understand that parents change too, human beings change. And so it's very important that we, during this period, that we can support caregivers, as we'll see through this project. Next slide, please. Thanks. And then finally, we understand that we live in a world of enormous inequalities, and we understand that people experience this life as unfair. So if we're supporting babies and new parents, we're sending a message that everybody deserves a good start. And when we support caregivers, we're understanding that we're supporting caregivers to be able to also be the best people they can be in society. Next, please. And finally, we understand that working together, the politics of common ground, we understand that when we center and raise a child, it's much easier to bring people from different political spectrums, different ethnic spectrum, people around the world can come together because we all agree about how important our children are to each other. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. It's very important for us that ideas, our projects can go to scale. We understand is that we want to scale projects like these with the greatest potential so that we can improve the lives of the greatest number of babies, toddlers, and their caregivers. And this is why part of our work focuses on cities. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We work through, particularly with our program with Urban 95, we work specifically with cities to really make sure that children and their caregivers have access to accessible early years services, that we can support caregivers, and that we can also expose children to play spaces we prefer when they're natural environments for play, exercise, and rest, because we understand how crucial this is for children's mental and physical health. We understand that when children have access to these spaces, we know how important it is for children's development. Next slide, please. And so for us at the Urban 95 program, which my colleague Vicky, who's online here, manages, we understand that we ask the question, what would a city would be like from the perspective of a toddler and their family? A child that we know on the average is about 95 centimeters. What could be changed? Next slide. And so we work with policy planners, we work with policymakers, planners, practitioners to take key decisions that could support and create cities that support children and the people who care for them. Next slide, please. Because we understand that all these interactions in these cities build brains. We understand that building brains, as we mentioned earlier, means that we're giving children the best start in life. We also know that the interactions in cities can support caregivers also to be in their best mental health, their best physical health as well, and be able to better support their children. Next slide.
That's it.
Okay, that's perfect then. I really want to be able to thank SDI for working together and sharing with us all the learnings, as well as all the community organizations that were here. We're really excited to learn more about what's come out of it. We've been very excited to be a part of this project. So we're listening, and thank you so very much to everyone.
Thanks, Karma. It's been an absolute pleasure to be involved and work closely with the Bernard Van Leer Foundation, which has been establishing excellence in early childhood development for many decades. So thank you so much for that overview. And Karma, as well as her colleagues from the Van Leer Foundation, are available for additional questions at the end as well. I'd like to now ask Francis Mweje, who represents the Act Together, the Uganda NGO that was involved in the implementation. Francis, can you take us through the project objectives, methodology, and some of the key results? Okay, there might be some technical difficulty. I'm not seeing. Francis, maybe you're muted. All right. In absence of him being able to take us through, I'm going to do this. Francis, if you are able to join and your technical challenges are overcome, please just shout. So the improving early childhood development in slums and informal settlements project, which was funded by the Bernard Van Leer Foundation, as I noted, had 4 ultimate project objectives. The first was to increase the knowledge base of effective interventions supporting early childhood development and caregiver well-being. The second, to support women and community-led initiatives. Third, we wanted to improve collective learning. Learning was a key focus throughout the project, learning at the community, but also learning amongst one another, as Michaela had identified earlier, across and throughout organizations. Finally, we wanted to improve linkages to local governments, generate policy recommendations, advocacy tools to drive policy change for children and caregivers in informal settlements, and generally just increase the collaboration between different entities, because we all share the same concern and passion for our children. We underwent a fairly rigorous methodology to ensure that the processes that we undertook were rigorous, were harmonized, and were deep grounded in the work that was happening and the priorities that the communities have. We first co-developed a survey. This survey built on a platform that SDI has called Know Your City, which collects data on slums and informal settlements around the globe. This was a child and caregiver specific survey that we co-developed with communities to help form the basis of a needs assessment so that we could truly understand the priorities and concerns, challenges, and fears of communities. Following the survey that was implemented by community members themselves, we developed a call for proposals and asked that people develop programs or develop a project that explicitly linked with the challenges in their survey. Communities developed projects, submitted them for review by a panel that involves SDI, Center for Early Childhood Development, Bernard Van Leer Foundation, and community members. Then they undertook that, they conducted that project in each country. You'll see in just a moment what the different projects were, and that in some ways they were similar, in other ways they were different. Technical support was provided to communities from the SDI Secretariat, as well as the Center for Early Childhood Development and the Van Leer Foundation, as well as a local NGO. And as I said earlier, there was a particular focus on learning throughout. So in addition to ongoing consultation as needed and ad hoc technical assistance and support, we had a virtual midterm learning opportunity that allowed the implementation teams in the 3 countries to share some of their challenges and successes, and allowed enough time for them to incorporate new or adapted ways of doing things that they learned from one another. And we conducted an end of project learning exchange in Kampala, where we spent 3 days discussing the importance of the project, what went well, what we'd like to take forward, and continuing to learn from one another. The implementation teams are up on your screen. As I said earlier, that was implemented in 3 countries, Uganda. It was implemented by an NGO, Act Together, alongside the National Slum Dwellers Federation of Uganda. In Senegal, Urbacen, which is the Senegalese NGO, implemented alongside the Federation of Senegalese des Habitants. And in South Africa, the Community Organization Resource Center supported the Federation of the Urban Poor. So the project, I'll just briefly go through each of the projects in the countries. The project in Senegal, the aim was to consolidate territorial understanding of an area called Dija outside of Dakar. This neighborhood is one of the neighborhoods in which the Federation is involved in and has around 2,000 inhabitants, including at least 385 children aged 0 to 5. The key interventions in the Senegalese context were information and awareness raising through a public campaign, a comprehensive mapping of all children under 5 and pregnant mothers in the target area. They established a project management committee, which included members of the community and local officials, as well as other experts. The primary interventions also included the rehabilitation of an existing playground to increase inclusiveness for children under 5, and training to mothers and caregivers on various aspects such as nutrition, play, and children's development. You'll see here on your screen the picture, the before picture. This was an old playground in an informal settlement in Dakar. You can see on the bottom picture in the sort of center left is where there's a bunch of rubble. It was that area that was renovated to increase access and created a play space for children age 0 to 5. The intervention in Dakar included a children's play space outside of this picture now. There was children's space for over 100 children aged 5 and older to play. And the picture you're seeing now is a space that was designed specifically for children between 0 and 5 to allow them to have supervised, safe play. Their intervention included the training of 3 caregivers to provide effective supervision to children aged 0 to 5, as well as public awareness consultation and training through home visits that were conducted in collaboration with the local government. In South Africa, the program was implemented outside Cape Town in an area called Khayelitsha. If you know Cape Town, this project was implemented in Makaza and Philippi areas, respectively. The key interventions included a needs analysis to understand the materials, supplies, and equipment for 3 identified early childhood development centers. It included upgrading and renovations to these centers to ensure safety, and the delivery of capacity building training to teachers and volunteers at each ECD center, as well as local parents and caregivers. You'll see on the screen now is some pictures, some before pictures. There were 3 early childhood development centers. You can see on your screen how some of them, the ceiling was in need of repair. Some of it was quite ramshackle. The 3 ECD centers included upgrades and renovations to ensure safety of the children inside, as well as the integration of learning materials and reading materials for the caregivers to ensure that they had the materials that they needed to engage young children effectively. In Uganda, the project was implemented in an area of Kampala called Wakiso. The key interventions included the establishment of a child-safe play area. They conducted training workshops for parents and caregivers on fundamentals and principles of early childhood development. They conducted community awareness campaigns. and they promoted access to education and literature, including materials. This was the before picture of this beautiful green tree area in Uganda, in the area of Wakiso, before the intervention. This is a picture of the space afterwards. I was very lucky to have the opportunity to go there and see many dozens of children playing on this equipment with their friends, and it was very well used. This project included the establishment of this play area, which has now been used by over 50 kids. It included capacity building training that was delivered to 132 caregivers. In Uganda, they leveraged the village health teams to foster continuous learning amongst caregivers and build on the existing programs that are delivered by government. They had heavy engagement with government workers, over 17 different officials from various departments. That is a brief overview of the project and the various interventions that happened in each of the countries. I'm going to now go into some of the key learnings along with my colleague. Michaela, I think, unless Papa Keita is here. There was a lot of learning that came from this, and it would take days to go through how I think us as an organization at Slum Dwellers International and me personally have grown from this experience. But we've got a few slides that highlight the essence of some of the key learnings that we'd like to share today, and then we'll go into some depth a bit further throughout the program and allow time for questions and discussion. The first key learning is to harness the power of community. Successes in all of the countries relied on existing community mobilization structures within the Slum Dwellers International Federations. Federations in Slum Dwellers International are organized communities who live in slums and informal settlements, who self-organize, who have decision-making structures, who advocate for improved basic services and housing upgrades in their communities. And what we found is that with limited technical support, communities were able to design projects without jargon and without specialized ECD training. And this approach allowed the integration of basic ECD principles with their lived experiences for practical and contextualized understanding of ways to support children 0 to 5. Also, avoiding jargon and technical language facilitated conversations that then those members were able to conduct with their community members in their local language. Michaela?
Thanks, Tammy. So one really important learning was to ensure contextual relevancy. So each unique context must be fully understood for effective and efficient implementation. So that includes the knowledge, attitudes, and practices of local communities, as well as the availability and access of services and the relevant regulatory framework and policies. So what was important for this project, as Tammy said, was the survey process, where each implementing team went into the communities and understood what was needed, what was in place, but also the teams themselves were from the area. So we always made sure that each intervention was relevant within their context, and that was so key to the success of each intervention. Tammy?
Devolved decision-making. This was important because it's critical that with community-led projects that the decisions are made as close to the ground as possible. And this project was designed, implemented, and managed by communities themselves, including negotiations with other stakeholders, where they were sometimes supported by NGOs. But what we learned from this project and our other work is when communities are supported to exercise autonomy effectively, provided the information, allowed the authority to make decisions, that those implementers are more significantly capacitated and that change is more sustainable. Michaela? You're muted.
It has to happen at least once. Thanks, Tammy. So the next lesson is about engaging community awareness. Community awareness training and public campaigns were important in all implementation countries. There existed significant misinformation in the communities about young children's development, as well as parents and caregiver best practices. So providing evidence-based, accurate information to parents and caregivers was fundamental for them to be able to make informed decisions about their own practices and priorities. Many times in each country, we found that caregivers as parents, but also caregivers in the form of teachers, might not have had the amount of education or training or knowledge that they needed in order to know the best ways to look after young children. And the misinformation was significant. So we found that engaging community and awareness raising was vital for the success of the project, but also for the communities themselves. Tammy?
It was important to adopt a holistic approach. A holistic and integrated approach helped strengthen the project outcomes. And what we noted is that parents and caregivers naturally hold a holistic view of their children's lives. They don't think just of one sector of like, oh, they just need food. Parents are well equipped to understand the vast needs of children. And this approach targeted various elements of child development to ensure that ensure improvement in children's overall lives. Michaela?
Thanks, Tammy. So another key learning was leveraging existing projects. By leveraging existing projects and structures in a community, you could greatly increase impact, including civil society and government programs, and centering children's needs within those existing programs can greatly improve sustainability. Supporting children in informal settlements doesn't necessarily require starting entirely new programs or projects. You could have a project that's already running, as we saw many times in this program. You could have a project already running that was maybe targeted at adults or older children. And you can add an element to a project that's already running, either with a partner organization or a government project that's already running. If you add another element to a project that's already running, you can streamline interventions in the community in a way that ensures every element of those interventions can succeed. I'm hoping that makes sense. Tammy?
I thought it made sense, Michaela. All right. Practice adaptive management. This is important because it's important to note that the resources and timelines should be flexible. Now, all projects are inherently limited and time-bound and have limited resources. But it's important to recognize that community-led development requires agile responses to dynamic social and economic and political contexts. The contexts are often changing, particularly in slums and informal settlements. The people who are best able to respond and understand those nuanced changes are the communities themselves. And what we realize is that quality and sustainability can be improved if those most impacted have the authority to respond to those rapidly changing conditions. Michaela, do you want to take the last one?
Yeah, thanks so much, Tammy. So the last key learning was the importance of enrolling government and stakeholders. So it's important to inform local governments about projects to ensure they are aware of what's going on. And where possible, to collaborate with officials who may be able to offer direct technical assistance, facilitate connections to relevant government departments, and or minimize associated fees or procedural red tape. For example, in Uganda, the land that was available, the Ugandan team had to make sure that they were collaborating with the government structures that were available in the area in order to make that land available for this project. And by having those relationships with government, the government was able to provide fee reductions and help them with the process of acquiring the land. Then the last point is to use opportunities to strengthen the relationship between communities and government for improved understanding of mutual priorities. When you take every opportunity you can to basically grow the relationships between communities and local government, you make sure that everyone's on the same page, and ultimately that works for everyone in the community. Thanks, Tammy.
The last box just goes through some of the interesting ways in which government can play a support role. So I think a lot of times when we think of government and collaboration with government, we only think about resources, that government is often mandated to provide some of these services, but government can actually provide a lot more than just money. They can provide training. They can convene various government and non-government stakeholders. They can, as they did in Uganda, and I think we'll talk a bit about that in a minute, they can help with the allocation of land, the distribution or obtaining permits. They can reduce red tape or limit the fees involved and the transfer of land. They are houses of experts in a variety of different areas and can help deliver specialized knowledge that can support our programs in various aspects, in health and community development, early childhood development, economic development. And working with government provides an opportunity to also integrate our work into their work. And so we can work from a place of what are our shared priorities to work together to scale this important work. All right, we've got the next section, and we've had a variety of technical challenges. I won't go into all of them, but I'm not exactly sure who is on this call. So we do have a panel. The panel is representative of a variety of stakeholders. There are community members, government officials, as well as civil society and the nonprofit sector who is involved in this project. On this call, I've got some questions here. I'm just going to see, is Tazama here?
Tammy, I see Tazama on the call. I'm just waiting for her microphone to go on. There she is. Hi, Tazama.
Thanks, Tazama. All right, can I call you as our first panel member and ask you a question?
Apparently.
Oh, okay. All right, I can hear you now. All right, so I'd like to introduce my colleague Tozama Nomga. She represents the Federation of the Urban Poor here in Cape Town. And she was one of the leaders of the implementation team in the South Africa project. Tozama, the Federation in South Africa renovated 3 creches. Can you talk a bit about how were the decisions made and by whom? When you decided what materials and what renovations were going to occur within your project in Cape Town?
Zama, I need to stop you. I think there's some interference with some part of your technology. It's making a very strange sound. Can you try and either go further away or closer to something? Move around a little bit and try again.
Okay,
Can you hear me now? My neighbor who's playing music. But can you hear me now?
A little bit better. Whatever you did, do more of that.
Do more of this. Okay. We
Okay.
have and they presented this project leadership of FEDA in the Western Cape. We grab it with both hands because this was something new and exciting. And we identified the 3 crashes as the leaders of Federation. The 3 crashes that we identified are crashes that of people who is in the Federation. The first one, we did a needs assessment in both of those 3 crashes. We went to the crashes and do a needs assessment, and after that we prioritize the needs of those crashes because we also have to look at the funds. And we were very excited because the project came to us as raw as it is, so we have to start it from the beginning. We did the needs assessment, we prioritized, and then with also the principals and the caregivers and the fed up members of that community that is in that saving schemes. We saw that the crash, the ECD that is in Philippines needs to be demolished because of the health of the children and the safety, because it was like it will collapse anytime, and who knows who will be in there. That's where we focused and prioritized that we have to do a lot of the resources that has to go into that crash. And that we did, and it was successful. We look at the other 2 ECDs, and then we prioritize. The others that didn't need a lot. They only need to be renovated and equipment and education equipment they needed. So that was what we did in Cape Town. And that was very successful because today we have these 3 ECDs that we can say this happened. Within that period of renovating and doing all the going to the hardware and did the quotations. We also have workshops with the community, with the caregivers, and with the principals. Each of these ECDs, we invited also someone from the ECD forum in Kailicha in Makaza, who came and presented the importance of the early childhood within one of our workshops. And the workshop was held by WCECD. And that workshop opened also our eyes because we were from the Federation of the Urban and Rural Poor. We have never had this project. We deal in savings, we deal in building houses, we deal with informal renovation, informal settlements upgrading, but never had a chance to do a project like this. Hence, it was exciting. And it opened my mind a lot, because today also I can say, I see why is it important from 0 to 5, a child to be in an ECD. Brain started at a very early age.
Thanks so much, Tozan. It's been such a pleasure working closely with you since we're all in Cape Town, learning together through this process. And thank you so much for your leadership on implementing the project that you did in Cape Town. I'd like to now ask if, and I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly, Ms. Emily from the Waukesha Town Council was unable to make it today, but her colleague, Hafisa Namuli, who is part of the Waukesha Town Council in Kampala, Uganda, I believe is here. Can you unmute? Hafisa, are you still here? Hafisa Namuli from Waukesha Town Council.
Tammy, can I just add that perhaps Francis I see is on the call, and Francis is for everyone else just to know, Francis was the project leader in Uganda, and he has been working with the Waukesha Town Council. So perhaps Francis, would you like to unmute and just let us know if you're there and if you know whether our representative is with you or not available? Francis?
Hi, Michaela. Good greetings and good to be on this call. Our representative is here, but I think she's having some technicalities around connecting the audio because I don't see the microphone icon on her against her name. So maybe we can skip her slot for a moment and then be able to return when that is fixed. Is that okay?
Okay.
Francis,
That
am
sounds
I right that Betty is there on the
Yes,
call?
Betty's here.
Okay, so perhaps Tammy, you can go to Betty.
Great, thanks. Let's do that while we're working at our technical challenges. Betty, it's a pleasure to have you here as a part of this call. Betty, apologies for the names. Katusabe Betty Jesse is from the National Slum Dwellers Federation of Uganda in Kampala. She is a national leader and was the community leader for the implementation of this project. Betty, can you talk a bit about the public awareness campaign that was so important for you to undertake in Kampala? How you decided on the type of community awareness campaign and what messages and who did you work with to deliver that public awareness campaign?
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know whether it's there. It's afternoon, as she has mentioned. My name is Katusabe Betty Jesse from Uganda. Yeah, I'll just go direct to the question you've asked to save time. You asked me about why the public campaign was so important. It was discovered that during the data collection, 7 to 10 people in Waukesha didn't have knowledge about the child caregiving and also about few things like child care, child rights, safeguards on children, and also child protection. So when we did the public awareness, we saw that it was very important to have it. And also about the design of public campaign, so it was community-led process that was used to design the awareness as a strategy based on community perception, looking at the levels of education, culture, and socioeconomic levels of our communities here. So on a deliverable format, we chose the format of delivery after the community and the stakeholders engagement were held at to agree what message to deliver, what message to deliver to the community. So we came up with 2 strategies after our meeting as parents and caregivers group sessions. This message was delivered by village health teams. Here we call them VHTs. These are the local community-based groups established by the Ministry of Health of Uganda to support or to enhance healthcare services at the grassroots levels. Whenever we use that strategy, because they are direct to the community, whenever serving groups sits to meet for their activities, these people are so close and nearby, and some of them, they are part of these serving groups. So they are given a slot to sensitize about child bring up, nutrition, and other ECD aspects during the serving group meetings. Through these strategies, over 8 groups in Wakiso, Chikokiro settlement were engaged, at least with over 120 people were approached with that message, received that message through same system of serving group. We also had another system of community radios, whereby we had mass awareness through pre-recording messages that were played using the local community radios. These are loudspeakers which are put in place at the settlement level, markets places, worship places, and trading centers to inform or to give messages to the community in a way of awareness about the project of early childhood development. Thank you for listening to me.
Thanks. That was one of the really interesting and I think innovative things that Uganda did, was to think about where women and caregivers congregate and then use those spaces to deliver messages. So when you were looking at that, my understanding is that that's how you decided to develop pre-recorded messages and then deliver them at markets, because that's where women spend a bulk of their time during the day. And I think that that was a really interesting and innovative way to get some of those key messages across. Thanks, Betty. That was really great. Thank you for that. All right, are we over our technical challenges for our colleague from the Wakiso Town Council? Is the interpretation working properly? I haven't heard anything, but I also don't know if our Senegalese colleagues are on the call. Can I get a message through some format? If Mokhtar is available, Mr. Mokhtar Sek, or Fatimata Bassou. And we can get some perspectives from the Senegalese implementation team. Anything from the Senegalese team?
Tammy, just to say the French translation is working well. So I think perhaps the whole of Senegal does not have data connectivity right now, because I can see that our translator, Richard, his French translation is working, but I can't see Mukhtar or Fatimata on the call, and they are always on the calls when we need them. So I think maybe there is an actual connection issue with people in the car right now.
Okay, I did see Fatimata come in and then she immediately dropped. So I think that there's definitely technical problems from that.
For them.
All right. Okay. Should we move on to, I think that everybody that is on our panel who is available has spoken except for Ruth.
Ruth, we have wonderful Ruth, our government official from South Africa. Tammy, I think Ruth is there and can put her video and unmute herself, and then you can ask the question.
Great. Hi. So
hi, Tammy. I'm here.
Hi, Ruth. Thank you so much. Miss Ruth Lucas, who is the Director of Early Childhood Development for the Western Cape in South Africa. And we're absolutely delighted and privileged to have you in your busy schedule be a part of this webinar. So thank you so much for coming. We wanted to know or hear from your perspective, what are the key lessons that you've learned about working in ECD and informal settlements specifically? And what is your branch of government strategy to support ECD in informal settlements going forward?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question, Tammy. Let me first just sketch a bit of a background around early childhood development in the Western Cape and also South Africa. The Department of Basic Education took over the function of early childhood development on the 1st of April 2022. So fairly young. We took it over from the Department of Social Development. So for the past 2 years, we have been managing the function. We offer a mixed model provisioning, which is center-based and also out-of-center-based, which is playgroups, home-based, toy libraries for all of our young children within the Western Cape. We also have a brand new strategy, which is the 2030 strategy for early childhood development. And so before we speak about what we would be doing in the informal settlements within the Western Cape, let us just understand that our 5 priorities will also be threaded through our interventions for informal settlements in terms of access, which is part of the social justice framing of all of our interventions. So access for all children to this flexible package we need to ensure. And then the coordination, because within the Western Cape, we have various government organizations, civic society, NGOs, trusts, all working in early childhood development. We also have a social compact as part of our strategy, our 2030 strategy, meaning that we will, as government, work with donors, partners, to ensure that there is service delivery within early childhood development. One of the other aspects of our priorities is also resourcing. Finding that we give adequate funding. However, currently we only give 17 Rand per day per child. It isn't enough, but we have to use the money effectively within any setting within the Western Cape. We also need to look at the workforce, meaning the qualifications of our practitioners offering this service. So when we speak about what our findings were, we want to, almost grounded in our 5 priorities. We also want to work within our ECD sector to progressively improve the quality of teaching and learning and programs within the sector. You would have noticed that one of the key areas that's very, very problematic for informal settlement ECDs is registration. because we have two government departments working in that sphere of our offering, which is the local government, municipalities, and us who do the norms and standards, apply norms and standards to the application, and then also give a certificate, signed certificate based on the criteria. We have over a number of years just used various ways in which to get our informal settlement members on board in terms of registration, because it's very difficult, because they do not have sometimes the traditional understanding of what infrastructure is needed, and our bylaws in our municipalities make it very difficult for informal settlement ECDs to actually register with us. And so we've had a Vangasali project a while back under DSD. We're now entering a phase where we want to do a mass registration, which will also just bring all of those informal settlement ECDs under our watch, because if they are unregistered now, they will form part of that mass registration drive. It's important that when we dealt with informal settlements, and I've had 3 engagements that I've gone out in just one area in the Western Cape. And one of the things that we picked up is that informal settlements, there are certain challenges that they are, hamstrung. They are actually, besides poverty, besides the lack of nutrition for the children, because sometimes they have to, charge very low fees, and that is augmented by our 17 Rand per day. But there's also gangsterism and extortion and hijacking and all of those elements. So it affects not only the children, the young children, it also affects the supervisors. So they need to be resilient in order to actually function and have an ECD in areas like that. And then also, one of the things that we found is that human resource, people get qualified and then they move out because they look for better prospects. And so that is also one of the key things that we picked up. So there's a high need for resilience. The people are once they are qualified, they're moving away. One of the things that is really an issue is that we are not getting all of our children in our informal settlements into early childhood development offerings, whether it is a center-based or out-of-center-based activity. And that's going to be, going forward, one of the strategies. We have to get in our children who are living in certain conditions that we want to improve their life, their lot in life. And we also want to give the trajectory for them to be able to learn and become better at what they are doing. And there's excellent work, I must tell you, that within our informal settlements, we found that there was a highly functioning organizational culture. And that is what we as WCED will have to leverage going forward. We also have to improve the workforce in terms of the understanding and in terms of implementing a quality program. So lots of training. We need to progressively do that because it is quite a wide range of informal settlements within the whole of the Western Cape. And each of them have their unique conditions, unique understanding of what their needs are. So as government, we will have to, going forward, engage them so that our interventions can actually bear fruit, because we don't want to just have one size fits all. We want to actually give a meaningful intervention so that it works within a community. We also know that within our current communities, in our informal settlements, there is quite a number of organizations already helping young children. There are soup kitchens, there are various NGOs coming to give various support to ECD, and maybe we can leverage and coordinate our offering or what we would like to see as an outcome through those existing organizations. One of the things that is also quite important, it is building resilience, understanding that the well-being not only of the child, but of the supervisor, of the practitioner, helping their child, the parents, having a national parenting program running within the community. I think that would help us in our strategy to get to our parents so that they can also understand the value of early childhood development and how it can impact not only their community, but the country as a whole. It's always sad when we realize that in early childhood development, who works here? It's the females, it is people of color, it is people without qualifications sometimes, and they are really doing the best that they possibly can. So our job as government must be to enhance, to actually build resilience, to enhance what is currently there, but also to help them to get a qualification in early childhood development if you don't have one. Many of our learnerships have gone to early childhood development centers, meaning currently our government has a learnership program which is run by our 60 vet colleges, which is accredited, and quite a number of practitioners have gone through the system. However, once they are qualified, they don't stay in the ECD space. They obviously move to public ordinary schooling and teach grade R with level 5. So we need to ensure that the culture of early childhood development will be able to hold our people that are qualified so that we will improve the system in that way. We must, and I think this is an area that not only in the informal settlements, but the recognition of our practitioners as being the most important people in the life of a young child next to their parents. It is important that we as government, we notice that practitioners do not have the same standing within the hierarchy of teachers, but yet they are the foundation. So that's something that we actively as government must work towards. I've mentioned that we have quite a few interventions, and there are some very stunning interventions that we can do, but we are also hampered by the environment, and we also have to use alternative ways to get people maybe not in the area, training in the area, but outside of the area, which is close enough, because we also have cost containment. We have various things that we also have to contend with, but we must develop our practitioners, we must develop our parents, we must look at how we can support our informal settlement ECDs to get to the minimum of bronze registration. We have wonderful SSOs in this province doing just that, helping our people on the ground to get registered. We must develop a thriving community of best practice. So it's not only going to be up to government, it's also going to be up to civic society, all of our NGOs that are working in the space to come together, sit around the table and say, we need to develop a program of enhancing the activities that you are currently doing, but also to show that we are wanting to thrive within early childhood development. And using that word thrive, I just want to say that our informal settlements are hampered by various issues. There are really quite a number of issues. However, There are females who have been doing this for many, many, many years, and I really commend them because they are the ones that have ensured that this service delivery to young children happens in sometimes very dire circumstances. So as WCED, which is the Western Cape Education Department, we and the ECD facilities within informal settlements will have to learn, we have to unlearn, we have to relearn ways to make ECD sustainable for the future, regardless of all of the issues that I've mentioned before. And so together, we would want to look at a broader developmental program for the challenges that we have, and we have quite a few of them. We understand, and this is something that we have to say, and it is something that is part of our DNA and our strategy. We understand the importance of ECD in informal settlements. Why? Because they play a necessary role. It is important that they are the ones quite close to the parent so that parents can go and work. And so we need to support poor households, we need to support parents who are bringing their children so that they can go and earn a livelihood. The lack of skills and capacity building, that is something that we feel as education department, something that we need to also take hands, because we have the SSOs that have been doing sterling work. They do capacity building. They walk alongside ECD centers for registration. They also do learnerships and training. But we as government also have a role to play. And so, yes, in the future, that's our outlook for informal settlements. One of the things that is, I think, the bear bug, as they call them, is the infrastructure part of registration, and that's important. We have to start looking at how we can intercede for informal settlements at municipal level, provincial level, and national level, so that everybody within the ECD sector can really reap the benefits of being registered, then applying for funding and receiving that funding, so that the children that need it the most really receive funding from government. And then my last point would be the nutritional support, because as you know, research shows us, and I think there's so many that we can quote, that says that our young children's brain development in that period of 0 to 5 is so important. So it's not just about the teaching and learning, it's about the quality nutrition so that the brain can develop and grow simultaneously with good quality programs supporting them, so that we can change the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was really inspiring. And I think what really struck me is that you said so many things, building on social justice, the importance of resilience building amongst communities, and your point that while the government has a mandate to support early childhood development, that it can't do it alone, that it will take, as we like to say, a village, and that there's a stake for all of us to ensure that our kids have the best lives and are able to reach their maximum potential. And so thank you so much for giving that perspective from the Western Cape government. And we might have a couple questions for you. I just want to see, we have, I think, Hafisa is on from Wakiso Town Council. If you are here, can you unmute and say hello?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Namuli Hafsa, and I'm the physical planner for Wakiso Town Council. I'm sorry for being a little bit late. I was found in the field. There was an emergency, so I ended up, my network wasn't very stable because I had to step out of the office, and I'm still out in the field.
Okay. We know you're incredibly busy and have a really important portfolio, so we won't take your time, but thank you so much for being a part of this. And I just want to ask you one question. If you can help explain to the members of this webinar, in what ways did the Wakiso Town Council support the project implementation? And how did the collaboration between local government and communities, in your view, promote sustainability and promote the efficacy of this project?
Yeah, basically, the main way through which government supported the implementation of this project was through the approval processes and guiding the team through the drawings and the site plans and site layouts that had to be used to be able to facilitate implementation of the project, but also support in regards to how this can be continued, but also support the team going forward. While in regards to the technical support, because as you all know, and I'm pretty sure this is still the same even in other countries, while the government has the mandate and the policies put in place that are meant to guide but also support ECD services, at times governments are overwhelmed with limited resources, but also the numbers and sometimes with the capacity to be able to implement these kinds of things. So when we get a chance to have this kind of partnership, we try to provide the technical support that the projects would really require. And for Wakiso's case, the first technical support that was provided was in terms of training or giving skills to the village health teams that were existing within the neighborhood, to be able to train them on how those that were existing, but also train more in terms of numbers to be able to increase their numbers and their capacity to be able to deal with the needs of the parents, but also to be able to provide the primary care that they can give in regards to their neighborhood, what the children wanted, but also what their mothers or members of their families would require as they live harmoniously within the neighborhood, but also to kind of support the facility. Then the other way was through the technical approvals of the plan, the structure plan and the site layout plan or the building plan that was produced by the team from Act Together and the other partners. Because as you're aware, all developments have to go through the approval process. And basically what we were doing was to ensure that there was, we had to ascertain issues of proof of ownership, or what we would call tenure security, to be able to ensure that it's not a facility that is going to be put in a place and then within the next day or the next few months, then it would have to go because the landowners are not in proper check, or they are not aware of what is happening. So we needed to check on issues of tenure security in regards to land ownership, where this facility was going to be put, but also ensure that the designs made would really be of open access, but also could resonate with the needs of the young people and the children within this neighborhood, but also ensure that issues of proximity and activity were catered for, because the center needed to be close to the neighborhood, where the children could easily walk in and play in a safe space that is has trees and things like that, but also be in a space where the neighbors are not worried when their kids walk out to go out and play, that it's central in nature, that when they are looking for them, at least one parent knows where to go to be able to locate their child. And so in regards to these approvals, I remember we were able to, because there are dues that are meant to be paid in terms of approvals that are meant to be paid to the government coffers. But in this case, because it was a partnership, but also to kind of ensure some kind of sustainability, but also to show the goodwill and the support that we are part of this project. There was financial support, and this was done in regards to, it was done with a waiver where we waived off the fees that were supposed to be paid. And I remember we cut down the costs from what would have been around $1,110 to about $53. And even these $53 that were paid were more of development fees to kind of give importance to the facility, and for them to not take it for granted, or the users not to take it for granted, and the caretakers, but to realize the importance of what this was, and then were able to approve and waiver off that fee. But also in regards to how this kind of involvement of government, we realize as government that while we have the mandate to do this, it's very important to kind of provide support to the different NGOs and different partners that are doing this kind of work, because they are doing it on behalf or in support of the government priorities that of things that would want to see being done. So it's important to support them, to be able to look at what then this can build into. And in regards to this, and how we could, this supported more or less the collaboration and the partnership in terms of strengthening it, but also ensure that there is some bit of sustainability, because for starters, we ensure that it aligns with the government policies, so that, say, for instance, when I use the approval process, it was basically to ensure that the center has proper approval, so that it's not a one-off thing that is going to go away tomorrow, but it's something that is going to be there for the future. And approving it or having a plan for it in place was a requirement, or one of the aspects provided for in the policies. So in regards to sustainability, that was one of the ways, but also the fact that different departments like the health department, the engineering department, the administration, and the community development department, and the physical planning development department were engaged in the process, while looking at the different aspects concerning a community development that each department has to work on, was really also a plus, and ensured that it's something that, while the community development officer is doing their day-to-day work, then they are able to feature in or consider the needs of the children, but also the mothers and the other community members in the neighborhood of this center. And the other thing, this whole process kind of impacted this relationship or this partnership in ways that we could fathom, we couldn't fathom in the beginning, because it kind of gave us a joint voice, but also looking at what the joint feature efforts would be. What it gave us a chance as government to see what we really need to do going forward, and also how we need to expand all. So this center was like a precedent setting aspect for us to know that we need to work hard to extend these kind of services elsewhere within the urban center, so that it's not only enjoyed by one group in one community, where it was initiated by Act Together and the partners, but also being able to work as a team, kind of build the trust where the development partners and the community looked at government as allies rather than obstacles or a group of people that would be against what they want to aspire for in a community, but rather look at the government as allies that they can work together with to be able to kind of frontier the interests of the community. And it also gave a sense of what the bottom-up planning would look like, rather than us coming up as government to say, we want a center here and this is what it should look like. This time around, the center was developed with the interests of what the community needed in the beginning, and then we had to develop on that to be able to come up with something that was more community driven than a top-bottom, using the top-bottom approach. So, and we realized that when you use these kinds of approaches, then it's very easy for community buy-in, but also for them to have a sense of ownership and be able to maintain this center or look after it, because then it's looked at as something they own rather than just something dumped on them. But also we realized that when you do this as a group and you develop the trust and you're able to plan together, then you're able to work on a number of things rather than just the community center, but also look at the other things that you would have underlooked in the beginning. Working together also made us realize that there was a strong need for security in terms of the kids, where they are playing from, but also this brought being able to work together. We're able to engage the LC1 and the defense offices of the local council 1 to be able to be frontiering as the main defense and security givers or providers of the neighborhood, but also as the center. So it gave room for us to be able to work both the different levels of government, but also the different arms of government, both the political and the technical arm, to be able to put this in place, but also to ensure that it's long lasting or it's sustainable. And so we also realized that there are a number of things that then we would need to, rather than just it being a play center, there are a number of additional supporting services that would be required, like maybe counseling to the mothers of these children. Maybe if for some homes that can't afford food, if there could be certain things that can be done in regards to providing food to these families or these households. So it's important, and it made us realize that there is more support that is needed to be injected into this center, so that it's not just a one service center, but it's a multiple service center to both the children, but also to their mothers or their primary caregivers, to be able to provide for these other additional services like nutrition and health and things of that sort. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive answer. I think from my perspective, this project never could have happened without you and the support of the local Waukesha Local Council, which you allowed the land to go through, you helped push permits. So we're just really grateful for your support and the acknowledgement of the value that community-led bottom-up approaches can add when we view each other as allies instead of obstacles. And so thank you so much. That was really powerful presentation, and so grateful for your time. I do want to hear from the Senegalese if we can before we open it up for questions. I did see in the chat that we've got, and my apologies for the pronunciation, Dr. Oli Celio, who is representative of Pekin, which is the region of Senegal that the project was implemented. Doctor, are you here with us?
Oh, I'm here. Hello, some guys. I'm
Okay.
from Elise, and ONG Urbasen from Amdin, who invite the collectivity local to participate in the round. Thank you so much. We are learning and we are waiting for the question.
Wonderful, wonderful. Can I ask you a question around your government's participation and in the project?
Our government for the children protection, we have only committee protection for children, and where is a right of children is it not also all performance. We needed accompaniment, we needed to some things for better living for child.
Thank you. And my understanding, Doctor, is that you worked with Urbicen, the Federation, and provided a variety of trainings and capacity building sessions with communities that really added value. Oh, we see your face. Welcome, welcome. Lovely to see your face.
Okay, thank you so much. We are learning and we are waiting for question.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your joining this webinar and your participation in the project.
It is from the invitation of Irbasen, Amdin, Mokhtar, another one from the collectivity Aïssata, donc Fatmata Bousso. Donc it is a team who invite me to participate. So much. Thank you for the gains.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your support and the information.
Okay.
Thank you. We have about 20 minutes left. I want to just open it up before we answer any questions. If Victoria or Karama's already presented, if you had any brief words or reflections that you wanted to share before we open it up for questions. And Victoria and Karama are from the Leer Foundation, who walked this path alongside us and have provided us the funding. You don't have to. I just thought if you did have some thoughts or reflections that we do have a minute for you to share.
Hi, I don't know if Vicky will add any questions or add any thoughts. I think this was a very, we were very excited about this project and continue to be so, because I think as we heard from the different government officials that there's an incredible capacity to scale and to support governments in what they're already trying to do, as well as being able to get the technical assistance that government usually has to support organizations, and then to really be able to make sure that the services that are offered are well contextualized. So that was really very powerful, and it was, I think, important to underline. I also think it was really wonderful to have such a breadth and diversity of different experiences, all informing what we know about what the best practices are for communities and caregivers. So I thought that was also really, really powerful to learn from. And again, we really want to thank everybody who's involved and who participated, because I think the learnings are really excellent learnings for us all to take forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. I believe I see Papa Keita. Is that you, Papa Keita?
Yes, Tammy.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I'm well. Maybe we just have a couple of minutes to get your perspective. Papa Keita can introduce himself. He's my colleague and the director of the Senegalese NGO Urbicin. But Papa Keita, do you have 2 minutes to talk about what ways did you and the Senegal team work with existing programs?
Voilà. Donc, merci beaucoup, Tammy, et bonjour à tout le monde. Nous nous excusons donc d'avoir raté en tout cas une bonne partie de ce webinaire. Il y a eu une grande confusion par rapport aux heures. Donc, à cause du décalage horaire, nous nous en excusons. Et je sais que du bon travail a été fait. Moi, je suis là avec, je suis Papa Keita, je suis le responsable de l'ONG Urbacen. Je suis avec Mokhtar Sek, qui au niveau de l'organisation a vraiment conduit pratiquement et suivi tous les travaux. Nous remercions donc Dr Oulimata, donc du gouvernement local, qui a énormément contribué à ce projet. Marie-Hélène Bahoum de la Case des Tout-Petits, c'était un peu la star que nous attendions. Malheureusement, à cause de cette confusion, elle n'était pas sur place. Elle a quelques problèmes techniques, en tout cas, pour nous rejoindre. Mais je voudrais en quelques mots dire, en tout cas, l'importance de ce projet-là. Donc, pour déjà la politique nationale de la protection de l'enfant au Sénégal, pour le gouvernement local de la commune de Djidda Thiaroye Kao, ici représenté par Dr Oulimata Gueye, et pour la Fédération des habitants du Sénégal aussi, dirigée par Aïssata Talla, malheureusement qui a perdu sa grand-mère et qui n'est pas là aujourd'hui. Et puis, donc, pour toute l'équipe de Urbacen, parce que ça, c'est vraiment quelque chose d'assez nouveau dans notre démarche au Sénégal, parce que la protection des tout-petits a toujours été l'affaire de l'État central. Et depuis maintenant bientôt une vingtaine d'années, le gouvernement avait senti en tout cas la nécessité de prendre cette tranche de la population, donc cette tranche d'âge-là en compte, et avait créé un programme, une direction spéciale qui s'appelle la direction de la case des tout-petits, qui a eu à construire donc dans beaucoup de villes du Sénégal, pratiquement toutes, et dans beaucoup de quartiers, donc des cases de tout petits. Mais vous savez, toujours ce que le fait le gouvernement ne peut pas être suffisant. Parce que quand tu as une grande commune et que tu as une case des tout petits ou deux, il faut aussi saluer cette action. Le gouvernement a fait beaucoup d'efforts et les gouvernements locaux aussi tentent de soutenir ces actions-là. Et il est important que nous, de la société civile, et nous qui sommes les communautés, nous jouions notre partition, en tout cas dans la construction de tout cela. Et ce projet nous a permis de le faire, de lancer un projet qui est pour nous un projet pilote dans une très grande commune et l'une des communes les plus peuplées de la région de Dakar. Et le succès a été tellement franc que depuis que nous avons installé en tout cas ce premier espace, nous sommes envahis par les autres quartiers, donc qui ne cessent d'envoyer des demandes. Ils n'ont même pas compris que nous avons été soutenus pour pouvoir le faire. Donc, tout le monde écrit, tout le monde vient nous voir pour avoir son projet à lui dans son quartier. Et cela montre en tout cas l'importance de ce qui a été fait. Je salue aussi donc la bonne collaboration entre les communautés, la société civile, le gouvernement local, parce que le maire en personne s'est intéressé à ce projet, mais aussi l'inspection de l'éducation qui représente donc l'État central, l'État du Sénégal. Je vais peut-être, Tammy, s'il vous plaît, permettre à Makhtar de dire 2 mots, parce que vraiment, lui a beaucoup participé à la mise en œuvre de ce projet-là. Merci à tout le monde.
Bonjour tout le monde, donc nous nous excusons donc, du retard. Donc, c'est avec plaisir que nous parlons de ce projet qui a connu un succès vraiment au niveau communautaire parce que c'est un projet qui responsabilise les communautés à la base, à la différence des autres, de l'initiative de l'État qui est portée par l'État, mais ça, c'est une initiative qui a été portée par les populations à la base. C'est tout l'intérêt de ce projet et c'est tout ce qui fait, en tout cas, la valeur ajoutée de ce projet. Et que ce projet a dès le début collaboré étroitement avec le gouvernement local représenté ici par Dr. Limata, que nous remercions au passage. Également, il y a eu la collaboration avec l'inspection de l'éducation et de la formation, l'IF de Pékin, qui nous a beaucoup soutenu, qui a élaboré même un module de formation spécifique au projet. Donc, et vraiment, la collaboration a permis, en tout cas, aux communautés de mieux comprendre ce qu'est le développement intégré de la petite enfance. Et c'est ça qui permet aujourd'hui aux soignants de pouvoir, en tout cas, mieux prendre soin des enfants, de les encadrer, de voir comment faire pour que les enfants puissent tirer le maximum de profit par rapport à l'encadrement. Également, ce projet, avec l'appui aussi de la Case des tout-petits, s'intéresse aussi aux femmes enceintes, parce que c'est des futures mères, et de ce point de vue, il y a des conseils qui leur ont donnés à travers des causeries qui leur permettent de mieux, en tout cas, mettre l'accent sur le développement intégré de la petite enfance. Donc, c'est vraiment ce que je tenais à dire et vraiment nous excuser par rapport quand même à ce retard. Également aussi, peut-être sans oublier que ce projet a été porté par la Fédération sénégalaise des habitants et que vraiment la présidente n'est pas là, mais celle qui coordonnait le projet au niveau communautaire et qui est en voyage. Donc, c'est la raison pour laquelle elle ne s'est pas connectée. La nutrition. Voilà, donc il y a eu des activités aussi de nutrition, il y a eu pas mal d'activités, un paquet d'activités qui a été déroulé pour permettre aux enfants de tirer le maximum de profit de ce projet.
Les contributions financières de la mairie des tiers.
Oui, ensuite il y a eu des contributions de la mairie et d'autres partenaires. Vraiment, c'est un projet qui a connu un succès. Donc nous vous remercions vraiment de cet appui qui a eu une valeur ajoutée certaine au niveau donc communautaire et dans les interventions de la PSH. Merci.
Thank you, Mokhtar. Thank you, Papa Keita. My condolences to Fatimata, who played a really critical role in this program as the community lead. Thank you all so much. I do think, all right. Thanks, everybody. We have 9 minutes left. There were a couple of quick questions in the chat, I think. Also wanted to open it up for the members in the audience who've been listening. If there's questions that you have that you'd like explored by anybody in the panel. Yes, is that you, Eric from CECD with your hand up? Please unmute and turn your video on.
Hi, Tammy. First of all, congratulations to Leer Foundation and SDI on a brilliant project. And thanks for including the Center for Early Childhood Development. Mine's a quick question to Karima at the Leer Foundation. Having a 3-country project is very unusual. And I think it's a very good move, particularly in terms of the benefits of peer learning between countries. Karima, do you have any advice? Have you done this before? And what's the Leer's position on multi-country projects or programs? I personally think it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for that question. I think that's a great question. And I think it also underlines one of the innovations that organizations like SDI are uniquely positioned to do, is because they're able to work in many different countries in Africa. I think it's rare. I think particularly around ECD, it's been rare for us. Generally, we've been working in specific countries. I know my colleagues can talk about other portfolios or other ways that we've been working. But in Africa, I think that this is actually, it's a great strategy. It's a great strategy to share learnings, to understand about different contexts, and also for us as an organization to be able to understand more. So I'm hearing some people saying that they can't hear me, but I hope everybody can hear me. But I do think it was a great learning experience, and I think the opportunity to learn, particularly from these three very different regions. We know there's linguistic differences. We know there's important cultural differences, and very often those linguistic and cultural differences exist within a country. So it's absolutely wonderful when Africa can come together and learn from each other, particularly around ECD, because it does, for us at the foundation, help strengthen our global perspective on ECD. So I hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Karima. That's great. I'm going to build on that and answer a question in the chat around how we chose these target areas. And we had a set of criteria. The criteria were designed primarily for learning. So those components that Karima talked about, we wanted countries with from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. So we chose one East, one South, and one West African country. We wanted variances in terms of their policy, ECD policy, and level of sophistication and implementation. We wanted to ensure that the countries in which the programs would be implemented had very strong, organized communities who had the capacity to lead the development, design, budgeting of projects. So essentially, we established a variety of criteria that would achieve our overall objectives. Chatted with each of the countries, chatted with several countries, and then eventually chose those three for those primary reasons. Any other questions, Michaela?
Hi, Tammy. There we go. I just wanted to answer a question that was also asked in the chat. Joseph from SDI asks, what has the impact of the project been on the parents of the children involved in the ECDs? Were they engaged? And what can we say about the sustainability of this project? So in a sense, I wanted to answer that in two parts. One is the sustainability of the projects. For Senegal and Uganda, those projects were a bit different to South Africa, as you heard through these presentations. And because the communities were the driving force behind the projects, they picked what was going to happen, and they actually implemented the projects themselves. They were in charge of how the budget was spent, the decisions were made. So when the project takes place, for example, Uganda made the play space for young children that was secured in a certain area, or in Senegal, they created these play spaces in an area that used to be like a dump site. The community is so involved in that project. I can tell you that the people who run the projects now, following the end of the project timeframe, are volunteers from the community who don't ask for a cent and volunteer their time to look after these community projects to make sure they keep going. And by including the communities from the beginning, you ensure that once a project, in inverted commas, is over, the community takes that project on as their own because it actually is their own. We've just provided the support to start it, and the Leer Foundation, in this case, provided the funding to start it. But because the community are the people who are actually making the project happen, once the project is over, the community still wants to run the project as they were doing. So it's incredible to see in those countries how volunteerism sustains those projects going forward. And then in South Africa, I just wanted to say one quick thing. So I'm hoping everyone can hear me. If you can't hear me, you need to go to the interpretation icon and click on original audio. That'll help you. Just give me 1 second. Sorry. Okay, I'm just making sure everyone can hear me. And then in South Africa, in order to ensure the sustainability of ECD centers, which is what that country focused on, actual preschools, creches, ECD centers is what we call them, by upgrading those centers and providing training to the caregivers or the teachers, by providing equipment. As soon as you're putting those structures in place, specifically in terms of infrastructure, those centers are able to meet the norms and standards that are set by the South African government in order to register as an ECD center with government. And by doing that, they're able to access the government subsidy that Ruth Lucas spoke about earlier, that's 17 Rand per child per day. So the government provides the ECD center that money per child. And by doing that, that center becomes financially sustainable. So to get registered, they have to meet these norms and standards. And by doing these upgrades, you're able to help them along that path. Obviously, it's a complicated path and there's other elements, but it's a really good start. And then those centers are able then to get subsidized. I hope that answers the question on sustainability.
Thanks. It's so important, sustainability. We definitely don't want dead assets. We could go on forever. This has been such a wonderful experience in terms of a project. It's been a wonderful experience being part of the team that's been involved in thinking about how to integrate kids into SDI's work. I've learned a tremendous amount. I think that if there's questions, Michaela, myself, SDI, CECD, very happy to talk more about it. I just want to close by noting that the percentage and numbers of kids who are living in informal settlements and slums is going to continually grow. And we need to find ways to ensure that children have access to the necessary support to develop optimally and reach their full potential as adults. And this is becoming a growing imperative. And would like to leave you with this message, that individuals living in informal settlements are natural innovators and problem solvers, that parents and caregivers in informal settlements understand the needs of their kids, and they have capacity to contribute to pragmatic solutions to improve child well-being. And that this project demonstrated that interventions built upon social, political, and intellectual capital of women can lead to significant contributions enhancing early childhood development in slums and informal settlements. We're really grateful for your time. 2 hours is a lot. We tried to cram it all in. Thanks for everybody who's participated in the project and the setup. Special thanks again, Bernard van Leer, Center for Early Childhood Development, Inya Talo, and all of my colleagues. And thank you so much. We'll be sending out the slides and information in an email. With that, I'll close the meeting and thank everybody again for your participation.
I'm also just putting my video on to say thank you to everyone so much, everyone on the panel, everyone who spoke, and all the project implementing teams. I miss you all very much. Like, I look forward to seeing you again soon. To everyone who was in the audience, thank you all so much for coming. I know it was a lot of information, and you would think 2 hours is a long time. It turns out 2 hours is no time at all. So if there's anything else you want to know, I've put my email address in the group chat, and you're welcome to email me for any more inquiries. But also, if you'd like to connect with any of the other project teams or panelists, we can provide you with their contact information. But we will be sending the slides out after this meeting. If you don't get the slides, perhaps you didn't RSVP through the link and you don't get the slides, you're also welcome to email me and I will make sure to send you the slides. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it, and brilliant job, Tammy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you to everyone.
Bye.
Thank you a lot.
Thanks and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
No problem.